Wii Sports Resort Golf is an ultimate test of skill. This version of golf is twice as big and more nuanced than the OG Wii Sports. 18 holes, 9 new and 9 from OG. Naturally, players around the globe have all tried to get as low of a score as possible, like a typical game of golf. Others, however, have competed for something else: speedrunning. More specifically, players have been grinding this run to achieve a long-awaited milestone: all 18 holes in under 10 minutes. But out of all the people who have played Wii Sports Resort, there was one player who was far better than anyone else, and the one most likely to get sub 10. This is Tyler. Sir Tyler. At the start of February 2018, Wii Sports Resort, and by extension the Wii series of games, had very tiny speedrun communities with little activity. This changed when that same month, legendary Mario 1 speedrunner Darbian picked up the Resort 18-hole golf run and got a world record of 12:31. This run would go viral on YouTube, and soon after, many new runners picked up the run. Tyler was among this wave of new runners, and by the end of the month, he had held the world record twice. By March, after trading the record a couple of times, Tyler brought the run below 11 minutes. And he just kept on lowering it. Tyler's dominance persisted through 2 waves of runner activity: the Darbian wave in February 2018, and in June 2020, when Summoning Salt released a world record progression on Wii Sports Resort Golf. At the time of that video, Tyler's record was a 10:14. The run was very good for the time, yet still very improvable, both in terms of quality of play and the video quality itself. If you could squint really hard, you could see that Tyler's splits had a secondary comparison for a sub 10. A pretty ambitious goal, but definitely achievable. He'd lowered the record by 13 seconds over the course of a month and a half. At that rate, it sounds like sub 10 is right around the corner. Unfortunately for Tyler, the remaining 15 seconds of time save would prove to be the most challenging yet. The 10-minute barrier was stubborn, unyielding, and a test of patience, skill, and luck. Let's take a look at Tyler's 10:14 as a starting point, and see what Wii Sports Resort Golf speedruns are all about. So, what is the fastest way to complete a hole? You might think that holing out from long range, or even getting a hole-in-one, is the best strategy, since it involves the least amount of strokes. But you couldn't be more wrong. Not only is it incredibly difficult to finish any given hole in the least number of strokes possible, it's actually slower too. One annoying change from OG Wii Sports, from a speedrunner's perspective at least, is Resort's replay system. If you get a chip in, you trigger an unskippable replay that wastes several seconds before your next shot. And that's not the only way to trigger it. Hit the ball too close to a hole? Replay. Make too impressive of a putt across the green into the hole? Replay. Hole-in-one? Need I say more? In addition to avoiding replays, runners are expected to make split-second decisions, such as adjusting their club choice and aiming based on position, as well as reacting to random elements such as the wind and pin location on the green. As random as wind and pins may be, they can be manipulated to a degree, and Tyler had some interesting strategies up his sleeve to do just that. First, the wind cycles between speeds and compass directions. There are 11 set speeds that are chosen once every 9 holes. The 8 wind directions also run on cycles, but unlike the wind speeds, a wind direction will not repeat until all 8 wind directions have appeared. With this in mind, Tyler would restart the game until he got a south wind on hole 1, thereby increasing the odds of more favorable wind conditions on the other holes in the front 9. Holes 3, 5, and 9 all require favorable winds for a chance at an eagle. Removing a headwind pattern certainly increases the odds in your favor for these holes, but one of the best skills Tyler had was adapting to various wind conditions. One of the most clever ways he dealt with it was wind canceling during hole 3. To compensate for the strong westbound wind, he does full-powered slices to keep the ball on a relatively straight path, hence the term wind canceling. Sometimes, he would hit the ball into the rough or bunker, since the increased friction stops the ball sooner. When hitting the ball from the rough or the bunker, there is a mechanic known as the rough squirt, where the ball won't shoot straight, but slightly to the left or right. While this sounds annoying and random on the surface, the rough squirt had advantages, and could even be controlled. For example, if you bend your shot slightly to the right, you get a right squirt, but a straight shot. This is useful for quickly redirecting your shots without needing to spend time aiming, or if you were on the fairway, going for a riskier curve. Tyler used his technique masterfully on hole 6, using a right squirt to offset the western wind. This was also combined with a backspin to stop the ball faster on the green. Stopping the ball from rolling too long is an important time save in a speedrun, so much so that it is sometimes advantageous to shoot the ball into a water hazard, a strat you would never see in a low score attempt. But Tyler did it on holes 9 and 15 for the sake of speed. Another unorthodox strat used is the pin manipulation I mentioned earlier. Nearly every hole in the game has 2 sets of 3 pin layouts that are randomly chosen. The exceptions are hole 1, which only has 3 pin locations, and hole 18, which has 1 fixed pin location. The 6 pin locations for the other holes are split into 3 A pins, which are generally harder, and 3 B pins, which are far easier. The game will choose A pins if your score is better than a certain threshold, but the game will choose from the easier B pins if your score is worse than a certain threshold. Speedrunners generally prefer B pins, so they will intentionally perform worse on holes by giving up. If you take too many strokes to clear a hole, the game will force you to give up and then move on to the next hole, penalizing you with a score equal to 3 times that hole's par. Giving up is slower than playing a hole normally, so don't worry, this speedrun isn't all about hitting the ball out of bounds and giving up. There's a separate category for that. However, Tyler purposely gives up on hole 1 by repeatedly hitting the ball out of bounds. A small time loss in isolation, but it ultimately saves more time from getting B pins early on. Giving up is also a viable strat for hole 17, but for a different reason. Sometimes, the wind conditions on 17 are so bad that getting a birdie without a replay is nearly impossible, and only a couple seconds faster than giving up. In his 10-14, Tyler managed to get the birdie on hole 17. Barely. It was so sketchy that it probably saved a second at most over giving up. It's a tough call, especially when you're on a tight pace like Tyler was. His front 9 was very good, with the only notable time loss being a few seconds due to bad wind RNG, costing him a shot. The earlier holes had great wind RNG and execution. The back 9 was where the run got a bit dicey. Tyler made his first execution mistake on the tee shot of hole 11, losing 3 to 4 seconds by narrowly missing the green. Hole 13 was pretty poor. He overshot the tee and then missed the birdie putt. This cost him 8 seconds, the biggest blunder of the run. Hole 14 was also sketchy, as he hit a tree off of the tee and landed in the rough. He managed to save this with a solid 3-wood shot across the bunker onto the green. On hole 16, he got an eagle with, at the time, the longest ever made putt that didn't trigger a replay. Heading into hole 18, Tyler was very close to losing world record pace, but managed to play the hole perfectly given the circumstances, including a driver chip in hole 18, which is done since the time ends when the ball lands in the hole, so the replay here loses no time. With that, Tyler improved his world record by 1 second. This run had a strong front half, but the execution errors in the back half killed the sub 10. The 10-14 was still a solid run, evidently so as it would stand through the rest of 2020 and most of 2021, and it wasn't from any lack of effort, quite the opposite. From June 2020, when Tyler got the 10-14 and the release of the Summoning Salt video, to December 2021, runner activity exploded. The leaderboard had tripled in size, and there were now 17 people with sub 11 times. The average skill level had improved greatly with the release of Caddy, a practice mod created by Kiwifruit. Caddy features hole, pin, and wind selectors, quick resets, and more tools that allowed for more efficient practice. Despite this, most of the members of the sub 11 club were not world record contenders. In third place, you had Danny H09, who, back in 2019, was Tyler's toughest opponent at the time, and had stolen most of his records. But by 2020, Tyler took back his records and Danny had taken his leave. So, who was the guy in second? Well, it wasn't a newcomer. It was someone who had been grinding for this record for nearly 2 years. And he had finally caught up. MineXeniM was the definition of a grinder. For over a year, he had been chipping away at several Wii Sports Resort categories, including golf. He was shaping up to be Tyler's greatest rival since Danny in 2019, methodically claiming most of the golf speedrun records. His improvement in 18-hole was incremental, but by 2021, Mine was a serious world record contender. On June 13th, Mine was on world record pace exiting hole 15. But then... Hole 16 is an infamous late-game run killer. On a real tight pace, you need an eagle to keep the run alive, but rarely will you ever see that happen. Mine overshot the green, a devastating blow. The record was still possible, but he couldn't afford any more mistakes. He certainly didn't want to deal with hole 17, so give up strats it is. His Wiimote batteries died. Oops. It would take a while until another opportunity would present itself. He pressed on, and then, on October 3rd, Mine found himself on yet another promising run. He ended up getting the eagle on hole 16, and opted to give up on hole 17. With no wind on hole 18, Mine was in a fantastic position to get an albatross, something Tyler didn't go for in his record. The run was his to lose, and lose the run he did. The replay was the nail in the coffin. Oh look, another run on world record pace in a hole 18. Oh look, that's the worst possible wind. It must have been maddening to keep getting this close, only to choke at the very end. The rest of the month went well for Mine though, as he soon became the second person to get a 10-1x. It was only a matter of time until a major breakthrough. On December 2nd, 2021, Mine found himself on yet another incredible run. The first 7 holes went amazingly, and it was easily the best pace ever up to hole 8. Unfortunately, Mine got an unlucky wind pattern on hole 8 and missed a putt, losing 7 seconds. Hole 8 is pretty tricky, but hole 9 is even worse. You need favorable wind RNG to have a good chance at eagle, and even then, there is little room for error. One of the hardest holes in the run, and if you get a bad wind pattern, you have to figure out how to lose as little time as possible, because you're guaranteed to at least lose some. Mine got lucky and nailed the eagle. All in all, a solid front half with sub-10 potential, and said potential was squashed with a missed putt on hole 12. After missing another shot on hole 14, things were looking a bit grim, especially since the last 3 holes could be a nightmarish gauntlet. The run was on life support at this point, and Mine needed to clutch up. On hole 16, he didn't bother going for the eagle, opting for a fast bunker birdie which kept him on world record pace. On hole 17, he couldn't afford to do the give up strat. He needed that birdie badly. He got that birdie. Now, on the final hole, the best possible time was 10-14. There was no wind, and the hardest holes were behind him. Even so, the odds of him bopping Tyler were pretty slim, yet Mine was gonna play it out. He was gonna go for the albatross, which Tyler was unable to go for in his record. After all, he had nothing to lose. Shot 2, with no setup, Mine let it rip.
Ship in for albatross.
By the skin of his teeth, Mine had dethroned Tyler. While the missed shots derailed the greatest pace ever, the champion had been dethroned, and glimpses of sub-10 potential shined through. Now, heading into 2022, competition was getting serious. How was Tyler gonna respond? 7 months had passed since Mines 1013, but Tyler was hungrier than ever. He was playing riskier than ever, but he was also better than ever. One strat that Tyler was already doing that I have yet to mention is aim canceling. Instead of letting the D-pad go when you're aiming the ball, it's about 1/10 of a second faster to press B to cancel the aiming and then hit your shot. However, it has a strange side effect: fast turn. Canceling your aim with B stores the speed at which you turn, which normally increases from when you begin holding a direction. This means that you could start your next turn at max speed, a blessing and a curse. Great for lining up a shot faster, but the fast aiming side effect could be a liability if you don't need to aim very far. To get sub 10, you really needed to know when to take these kind of risks. And on July 3rd, 2022, Tyler bet on a metaphorical coin toss, and it paid off. This particular run wasn't very impressive to start, and he was a few seconds behind his PB at the start of hole 7, where he ended up in the bunker by accident. This put Tyler in an interesting position. The best play here is to swing it past max power into the red, causing the ball to go either way left or way right. If it goes right, he gets one of the fastest hole 7s ever. If it goes to the left, the run is dead. As fate would have it, a mediocre run suddenly corrected course. It wasn't entirely smooth sailing though, as on hole 10, Tyler accidentally inputted B too early, resulting in an empty swing, throwing him off and cost him about 6 seconds. But birdies on holes 11 and 13 put Tyler on an incredible pace, and he had to capitalize on it. Tyler's 10:06 marked the end of an era for 18-hole speedruns. Even with a few missed shots, it was, far and away, the best executed run of the category thus far, using mostly the same strats since the Darbian area, aside from giving up. Beating a run of this caliber was not going to be easy, especially when you realize that no one, not even Tyler, had ever made it to hole 18 on a sub 10 pace. But also, the gap between first and second was large enough that it was hard to believe anyone could sub 10 other than Tyler. Again, with no new developments since the introduction of give-up strats, it was evident that this record was here to stand uncontested for a very long time. Or was it?
Colonel Neil, what the hell are you doing? In the middle of my backswing!
March 2023 rolls around, and a groundbreaking discovery was made. The Wii Sports plus Wii Sports Resort combo disc, the 2-in-1 disc that was only included in some black Wii bundles, was faster. The combo disc had faster load times overall, and these loads saved a few seconds over the course of an 18-hole game. While it may not seem like a huge deal, for a run this short, many runners began switching discs for the free time save. That being said, it was going to take more than faster loads to beat Tyler, and although many players improved their PBs around this time, Tyler had yet to return to 18-hole, and Mine would never improve his PB, having moved on to other categories. So, who was the guy in third? In February 2023, Mudkip SR breached Vncz territory, and you bet after faster loads were discovered that he kept his foot on the gas. Argentina will fall, he says, and sure enough, on June 22nd, Argentina would fall. But what about Canada?
Nice shot!
Hole 16 strikes again, killing the sub-10 pace, but he was still on a really good run. After a textbook give up on 17, Mudkip was on a real nail-biter world record pace heading into the final hole. Could he do it? An albatross with wind to clutch it? 10:07. Mudkip had gotten the second ever OX in 18-hole, but just barely missed the record. The rest of 2023 passed without any new world records, but a very useful tool by another top runner, Vncz, released. Windcracker. An easy way to track your wind direction and speed cycles, a guaranteed way to determine the wind direction for holes 8 and 16, as well as general probabilities for certain hole conditions, allowing runners to prepare better for what strats to use, given the possibilities. Plus, it also looks good on a stream layout. Like Tyler's. Dang, he really came a long way from the potato cam, hasn't he? Speaking of, by March 2024, Tyler came back and had something new in his bag of tricks. A thin thread of yarn. Yes, really. Tyler taped this thin piece of yarn to the center of his monitor for a new albatross setup on hole 18 by Vncz. You see, the default aiming position of your shot is slightly random, and since the strat involves a chip-in by aiming for the flag, an otherwise inconsequential variance of 0.04 to 0.2 degrees right of the hole center makes it really hard to aim. The yarn, however, proved to be more reliable than the minimap, which does take a while to appear. An unorthodox strat like this, as well as Windcracker, allowed Tyler to make decisions much quicker and precisely than before. With these tools and top-tier gameplay, Tyler set an impressive classic 9 holes world record of 4:35 on March 8, 2024, a world record run that's still standing nearly 2 years later. Having set an era-defining run in that golf category, Tyler set his sights on 18-hole once more, determined to snag that sub-10 once and for all. March 21st, 2024. On this date, one of Tyler's attempts got to a very strong start. Despite losing a bit of time on hole 7 and again on hole 9, getting a birdie instead of an eagle, it was the fastest front 9 holes ever, a new world record for Resort 9, and it certainly didn't end there. His first unforced error came on hole 12, but as far as birdies go, it was about as fast as it could be, losing 2 to 3 seconds to an eagle. Even when he made mistakes, he was willing to do anything to keep the sub-10 pace alive. Wow, what a nutty long-range putt on 14. What's even crazier is on hole 16, he does a drive chip, knowing that even with a replay, it was the slightly faster and safer option than chipping onto the green and making a putt, due to the side slope all around the hole. 17 gave favorable conditions, so Tyler would actually go for the birdie, and he got that birdie. And then, for the first time ever, someone started hole 18 on sub-10 pace. This was it. This was the run. Oh no. Southwest wind at 14 miles per hour. Out of the 88 wind direction and speed combinations Tyler could have gotten, he got the absolute worst scenario out of all of them, during the best pace in the speedrun's history. He couldn't go for the usual left island, he had to go right, where you don't have a close shot towards the hole. It might as well be curtains, unless he can make this putt.
Nice approach.
10:05. A new world record, but it was no sub-10. Progress was made, but it just wasn't good enough. Tyler was still playing hot, so he kept on grinding. So close, yet so far. Tyler would pour at least 4,000 more attempts, but even then, sub 10 still eluded his grasp. Eventually, Tyler decided to step away from 18-hole, focusing instead on other golf categories. To this day, 10:02 is his PB. With Tyler's absence and 3 seconds remaining, the pursuit of sub 10 was now in the hands of other runners. Speaking of other runners, whatever happened to Mudkip? Well, he certainly wasn't slouching. Mudkip was playing pretty well and consistently on world record pace, despite what all those red splits may tell you. He gave up on hole 2 instead at the start of the run, after Vncz accidentally discovered how fast it was compared to other early game give-up strats. Heading into the final stretch, he gets 0 wind on the infamous hole 16, and the first shot clears the bunker. Then, this happens. An epic long-distance putt for an epic gold split. Now, on a very promising sub 10 pace, Mudkip decides to play hole 17. He finds himself in position for another epic putt. And with that missed putt, sub 10 and world record was dead, but he still finished off the run with a small PB. He would get another shot at record another day. Just not for a while. Mudkip was far from the only active runner gunning for sub 10 though. Since late 2023, a certain player who had been running 18-hole for a while decided to give the grind his all, and as 2025 progressed, this runner suddenly was becoming more determined not only as a world record threat, but as yet another sub 10 contender. And he was gunning for it without the combo disc. Who was it, you may ask? Well, the answer is quite clear. CrystalCllear. In May 2025, Crystal achieved a 10-16, a run with a fantastic front 9, but a shaky back 9 that had him realize he was capable of achieving the most anticipated milestone in the game's speedrun history. But before anyone got on yet another sub 10 pacer, the most revolutionary development in Wii Golf was about to change the game forever. In 2023, Vncz released Windcracker. Now, in 2025, he released an upgrade, Windcracker. After studying the inner workings of the game's RNG functions, Vncz came to understand how RNG seeds, a set sequence of wind patterns for an entire game of golf, were generated. There is a video that goes into more detail that I've linked in the video description below, but to make a long story short, by inputting the wind patterns for the first 2 to 3 holes of a game, Windcracker will determine what RNG seed you are on, and give you the list of every upcoming wind direction and speed for the remaining holes. No more speculating on probability. No more waiting for the wind info to show up on the screen. With Windcracker, you already know. And this dramatically reduced the time you'd need to spend pondering your strats. And soon enough, several runners would begin to rapidly improve their PBs. It appeared that more runners were suddenly capable of achieving the legendary sub 10, but even with these new challengers, only 2 runners got onto actual sub 10 paces. Throughout the summer, Crystal was inching closer and closer, well into OX territory, but every darn time he got on world record pace, something went wrong. On a run with, yet again, the worst possible wind RNG on hole 18. Crystal clutched out a new PB by less than a second, and when the run was retimed, it turned out that his and Mudkip's PBs were tied to the frame in second place. It was getting real close. Sub 10 was imminent. It was no longer a matter of when it would happen, but who would be the one to make history. The battle between the two runner-ups bled into the fall, and on October 5th, Crystal would get on a pretty clean run. A mediocre front 9 by his high standards, but no major mistakes. 10:04. Good progress, and he broke the tie, but not enough for sub 10 quite yet. But given the brutal nature of this run, there was no guarantee that Crystal would get another chance before Mudkip would beat him. Sure enough, a month later, on November 18th, Mudkip was on a good run past the front 9, but after that, the run turned from good to incredible. Mudkip found himself in great position heading into hole 16. Fingers crossed.
Great shot.
A slow birdie put him behind, but knowing that the conditions were good enough for a birdie on 17, he had to go for it.
Good birdie.
Now, on hole 18, Mudkip was on world record pace, and sub 10 was awfully close. It was do or die. This one really hurt. Admittedly, sub 10 was likely dead after 16, but Mudkip had world record in the bag. But he aimed too far left, and the wind cost him the run. When speedrunning 18 hole at a top level, choking a good run and experiencing heartbreak is a feeling you have to get used to. The run was now a far cry from the early days, where players were still formulating strategies and trying to understand the game better on a technical level. Now, with a lot of strats solidified and the powerful Windcracker, the run was incredibly optimized, which made the sub 10 grind even more maddening. This was a barrier that runners have been trying to break for 5 whole years at this point. It was honestly ridiculous that it was now late 2025 and that sub 10 hadn't happened yet. It seemed like no matter how close people got, no one could finish the job. Time was running out before the new year, and at this rate, it was very possible by 2026, Tyler would still be number 1 with his 10:02, as the rest of the world struggled to close the gap, let alone surpass him. That brings us to November 23rd, merely days after Mudkip's biggest choke. Would the job be finished once and for all? Or was the 10-minute barrier here to stay? No, not this time. Hole 16 had time and time again proven to be a real thorn on many runners' sides. Crystal wasn't about to let a missed putt ruin everything he worked so hard for. Screw hole 17. We're giving it up. Unfavorable wind on hole 18? Bring it on, game. This ends here and now. When Crystal got this time, he had just stared at the monitor for a good 10 seconds in disbelief. It was over! Done and dusted. 9:56. Huge congrats to Crystal for being the one to not only beat Tyler, but to achieve such a long-awaited goal. Now that sub 10 happened, is this the end for 18 hole? Absolutely not. To this day, Crystal is still a bit upset that he missed that putt on hole 16. If he hadn't missed, the run very well could have been a 9-4x. In addition, Mudkip is still grinding for the record. Tyler plans to return to 18 hole, and recently, runners like T-Hassie and Rain DX have been on the rise, and are more than sub 10 capable. While it is unlikely that the 18-hole world record will ever fall below 9 minutes, there is still so much more potential for time save, and plenty of golf to be played. Special thanks to Tyler and Crystal for helping me with research for this video. I have linked them and other runners' channels in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to shoot for the moon.